Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of New York Giants Corner here at T2T Network. It is Wednesday, May 31st. I hope everyone's having a great month of May, which is about to end in a few hours, and I find that completely mind-blowing. And of course, here comes my dog, Melvin. As soon as I ever come online live, he just has to be part of the show. Poor Melvin just tossed his cookies a little while ago, so I don't know if he's feeling too good, but of course, he feels good enough to come over here and bug me when I'm live on air. But anyway, let's talk some Giants news. There's always Giants news. It's the off season, but our beloved Giants, there's always news going on. There's always something going on, some stuff I want to talk about, something I want to get off my chest when it comes to Saquon's contract. And we're going to talk a little DeAndre Hopkins, big question mark. I don't think he's going to come to us, but I have to say I am intrigued, and I would kick those tires on DeAndre Hopkins and OTA news. So it's OTA, it's nothing special, but still, it's always nice to hear good news coming out of OTAs anyway. And there's been a plethora of good news, just good light news coming out of Giants OTA. And right now, honestly, when it comes to OTAs, all I really want is get out of those things 100% healthy. Please, no knee injuries, nothing crazy. Just get out of these things healthy, please. Before we get into the content, though, let's get the bells and whistles out of the way, people. If you can, friendly reminder, hit that like button, subscribe, give us that 5-star Apple review. It helps us out a lot. Really appreciate it. Where you can find the show: Apple Podcast, YouTube, Facebook, Podbean, and Spotify. We are everywhere. But we do have to get on Instagram, I guess. Where you can find all of our content. I mean, you can find it the list I just gave you before, including YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, yada yada yada. Whatever we produce, whether it's videos or articles, it all winds up on our beautiful website, toiletsandtitles.com. We cover toiletsandtitles.com. We're not just toiletsandtitles.com, we're also the CFB Nation. So we are, and together we make T2T Network. Whatever both channels produce, it all goes to the toiletsandtitles.com website. We cover fantasy football, NFL, college football, and draft content. Basically, everything to do with football, we cover, and wherever we produce it, whatever format, it all winds up at toiletstotitles.com, our beautiful, wonderful website. And we have partnered, like I just mentioned, with at the CFB Nation. There's another show out there, or another channel out there called CFB Nation. Those are the phonies. Don't check them out. Those are the phonies. You want to check out at the CFB Nation. Those are our guys. And that is the College Football Nation. And, as the name implies, they cover the college game, the college players. They're doing a great job over there. Once those players graduate, we got them over at Toilets to Titles. So again, together, Toilets to Titles and the CFB Nation combined, we make T2T Network. But check out those guys. Please subscribe to their YouTube channel. Again, the CFB Nation. Please subscribe, help them out, and wonderful, wonderful college content those guys pump out every single day. I mean, those guys put in the hours. They have great production, great interviews, great analysis. And if you love football and you want to learn more about the college game, or if you're already a big college fan, please check out the CFB Nation. Subscribe. I promise you, you will not be disappointed. And patreon.com/toiletsandtitles. You go there, you can learn how you can further support our show and our shows, our T2T network. And I want to say thank you to our current Patreon supporters. We appreciate you appreciating us. Thank you so much. Feels really good. And last but not least, Gilded. We have our own T2T chat in Gilded. So if you want to talk anything to do with football at all, especially fantasy football, but anything football, but especially fantasy football, come on in. I should say reach out to me, or reach out to at Toilets to Titles. Say that you would like to become a member of Gilded. Get into the chat. We're up to like 125 or 135 of us now in the chat. We have a great time. And also our Frankenstein Fantasy Football League that we run just for subscribers, only for subscribers of our channel. We run our Frankenstein Fantasy Football League in the Gilded chat as well. So it's a really good time. You got to check it out. Anyway, everybody, let's get to the nuts and bolts over here. Let's get to the juicy content. as I like to say every week. If you looked at the title page, it looked like I was going to lead off with OTAs. Originally, I was, but I'm going to save that for last. I'm going to start off with Saquon's contract, and then we'll get into a little DeAndre Hopkins, which I find to be intriguing. Saquon's contract. I said a few weeks ago in one of my previous episodes that wasn't really worried about Saquon's contract. I'm not, just whatever happens, happens. And I'm sure I let it be known that I love Saquon and I want him here long term. But at that time, I was just like, hey, it's out of my hands, nothing I can do, but I'm not going to worry about it. I guess everything is going to work out in the end, whatever that means. Whatever the end is and whatever happens, it's going to work out. And but I gotta say, ever since that episode, I have actually become more emotionally invested in retaining Saquon Barkley for the long term. Um, because the more and more I think about it, the more and more I think I can't imagine him not being a New York Giant. I can't imagine him not being a New York Giant. He's a great, wonderful player. He is a great character person and he is a great captain and leader for this team. And you don't let someone like that go. Um, it's going to sound a little crazy when my son's gaming online, so if you hear him going woohoo, that's him playing with his like 5 or 6 friends from all over the world, whatever game they're playing right now. But they have a good time, so that's cool. But I cannot imagine not having Saquon Barkley on the Giants after next year. I have no doubt that even if the contract impasse remains, he doesn't sign an extension this year. I'm sure he will play this year for the team. It's type of player he is. I'm sure he's not going to sit out the year. He'll roll the dice and play on the franchise tag. But I don't want it to come to that because Saquon Barkley is someone you want on your team. He's someone you want to retain. He is an outstanding football player. He is a superstar. And you hold on to your superstars, especially in the prime of their career. And I know there's this argument about the running back position that in terms of its value, and I've actually always disagreed with that. Anyway, and I still do now. That if you have a star player, regardless of what the position is, you want to hold on to them. You want to hold on to that talent, especially when they're a high character person like Saquon Barkley. I mean, really, realistically, like you look at like the tight end position, which is one of my favorite positions in all of football. Um, yeah, people, don't value it that much, or they used to value it less. And you look at Travis Kelsey, look at the production that Kansas City gets out of Travis Kelsey. And I think Saquon Barkley is like a Travis Kelsey. He's like the Travis Kelsey of the running back position, along with Christian McCaffrey, who I will put slightly ahead of Saquon. He's got a little more of a track record than Saquon. But you look at linebacker positions, Roquan Smith. People, a lot of times discount the linebacker position like it doesn't mean anything. I completely disagree with that. Look at Roquan Smith as his own agent. He just got $20 million a year from the Baltimore Ravens, and he's an excellent linebacker. I think he's worth it. The Derwin James contract, San Diego. People had their opinions about that. Well, is the safety position really worth all that much? Yeah, you know what? When you have an exceptional player, you're playing for that exceptional player regardless of the position. You can't just put all of your money in the quarterback position. And quite frankly, I think the wide receiver position is the one that's gotten, up until this free agency season, up until this one, which was very tame and very mild. I think wide receivers were getting absolutely insane. And I do think they tend to be, when you're a superstar wide receiver, I'm not going to say you're as replaceable. I'm not going to say you're as replaceable as, some other, many other wide receivers. But when you have a superstar player and your team is built around that player, your offense or your defense, you lose them regardless of the position they play. It's going to hurt you substantially. Let's see how everyone just talks about the wide receiver position. Well, listen, let's and how Saquon just plays out of the running back position, so he shouldn't be paid. Well, how is Joe Burrow going to do without every quarterback needs their superstar player? They need a collection of real good talent around them to win. Unless you're Patrick Mahomes, and then you only need Travis Kelsey, and then you can pretty much get along with mediocre wide receivers and fairly mediocre running back committee as well. But that's far and few between. That's Patrick Mahomes level, and that's pretty much it. You look at the great quarterbacks in history; they all had weapons. Joe Montana had Jerry Rice. Peyton Manning had his wide receivers. Tom Brady definitely had quite a few seasons. Most of his seasons, they weren't the best wide receivers. He had some really good ones. There was just only like 1 or 2 years where he had Randy Moss. And then he had other very good wide receivers, but they also had really good tight ends too. So if you have exceptional talent, you're going to make it work regardless of what the position is. And Saquon Barkley is an exceptional talent out of the running back position, and the guy is fully capable of giving you like uh, over 1,700 all-purpose yards in a given year when he's healthy. And he's not someone who I think has like he's not a player who has nagging injuries. Those are the type of injuries that kill you. The hamstring issues that always pop up, quad issues, the glute, turf toe, stuff like that. That's not Saquon. He's had two significant injuries that hurt his numbers. The first one I recall was his sophomore year on the Giants, and it was actually in the middle of Daniel Jones's first game as a starter. He got injured halfway through. He got injured halfway through the third game of the season, which was against Tampa Bay in Tampa Bay, and it was Daniel Jones's first start ever. And Daniel Jones had a phenomenal game. That was a wonderful game. He had a great first game, and Saquon actually got injured in the middle of the game. He had to leave the game and didn't come back, and he had a high ankle sprain, and then he missed the next week after that. After that, he missed after missing only a game and a half with a high ankle sprain. He played for like the next 6 or 7 weeks on that high ankle sprain, and you can tell that he was not the Saquon from the previous year, which was his outstanding rookie year. You could tell he was not the same player, but he was out there playing in a high ankle sprain. You could tell he was very affected by it. And if you look at his numbers for 2019, I think he got slightly over 1,000 yards rushing, but obviously it wasn't the same as his rookie season. But you could see for like that 7 game stretch, he was not Saquon, but yet he was out there because I don't think it was because he was trying to be a superhero or anything. I think he's just a team player. And from early on in his career and even in college, he was a leader. So he was out there on the field on a crappy team that wound up winning like 4 games, throughout all of 2019. There he was out on the field playing his ass off with a high ankle sprain for like 7 games. And I think another reason why he was out there too was that, again, that was Daniel Jones's rookie year. I think Saquon knew that his new partner in crime, a rookie quarterback, needed his help. And even if he wasn't going to be that effective, at least he could be a distraction for the defense. He could be a decoy for the defense, I should say. That's the type of player that Saquon Barkley is. And now the year after that, we're all expecting to see rookie Saquon again. No, like 2 games in to his third season, he tears his ACL. He's out the rest of the year. His fourth year, he comes back, and you can tell he's not the same running back that he was his rookie year. And what I've always heard about ACL tears is that occasionally you'll get a player, once in a blue moon, you'll get a player who will come back like an Adrian Peterson, who will come back, after tearing an ACL and just take off from where he left off. And that's rare. That's once in a blue moon. What happened to Saquon is the norm when it comes to recovering from an ACL, and that is, yes, you get injured early one season. You can be on the field beginning of the following season, but you're probably not going to be the same player until the following season after that. And that's what we saw. And that's what we saw last season, fully healthy again for the first time since his rookie year. And what do we see? We see rookie like Saquon Barkley. Okay. And again, the injuries he had, a high ankle sprain and a torn ACL. It's not like this is nagging injuries like an OBJ with his hamstrings all the time. And I'm not knocking OBJ. I loved him when he was on the Giants. I mean, in terms of being a phenomenal player, best wide receiver I've ever seen with my own 2 eyes on the Giants. Um, but the dude always had hamstring issues. Continued with Cleveland as well, and you don't see that with Saquon. Those are the type of injuries that concern me the most. Not really the torn ACLs, not a high ankle sprain, the nagging injuries, the hamstrings, the glutes. turf toe, crap like that. And that's not Saquon Barkley. He's an outstanding talent out of the running back position. He's not just a running back. The way I describe him is that he is a weapon, a super weapon out of the running back position. And he's in the prime of his career right now. You don't let that walk away. And I just want to show you something, in terms of Christian McCaffrey's contract. I think he's the closest there is to Christian McCaffrey. I think they're obviously very comparable. They're two very similar type running backs. And you look at Christian McCaffrey's numbers, and this is from, again, the website is overthecap.com. They're very much a go-to site when it comes to players' contracts. And Christian McCaffrey's contract. Okay, so he had signed, and Christian McCaffrey is the highest paid running back ever, and deservedly so. He had signed a few years ago. He signed a 4-year extension worth $64 million. Okay, and then he signed it in 2020, but it didn't, as far as I know. I don't think it kicked in for a few more years actually. But he signed the extension, 4 years, $64 million. 30 of that was fully guaranteed, I should say. So, and it's my understanding that's the hang up with the Saquon contract, is the guaranteed money. Now, one thing I don't like, I have to admit, and I like the way that Joe Shane has handled lots of things, but there's obviously been leaks from the Giants front office regarding what they've offered to Saquon. And with the fan base, it's put him in, it's kind of put him in a corner in a way. Like if I'm Saquon Barkley, I don't care. This is my life. It's my contract. It's my career. I'm going to do what I feel like I need to do, regardless of what the fans think. But still, it's not. I don't like Saquon Barkley being almost portrayed as like, greedy or selfish, when we all know that's not him at all. And it's been leaked to the media. You have to assume from the front office that he was offered 12 million dollars a year, 12.5 million dollars a year, 13 or 13.5 million dollars a year. And Saquon never, the big thing here is the guaranteed money. And we've never heard anything, in terms of how much have the Giants offered in terms of guarantees. That's the key thing, is how much is guaranteed. And to his credit, Saquon's credit, his side's credit, those numbers haven't come out. They could have countered. They could have countered with that. So here's the thing: if McCaffrey, who Saquon Barkley is very similar to, and if he's not as good, then he's just a shade under Christian McCaffrey. Um, if Christian McCaffrey is getting $16 million a year with half of that guaranteed, I would be willing to pay Saquon Barkley $15 million a year with over 4 years. So that's $60 million. It's a $60 million over 4 years with half of it guaranteed. I'd give him the 30 million guaranteed because I think he's worth it. This isn't a 7-year deal. You're looking at like a 4-year deal with basically probably around 3 years of it guaranteed. And he's what? What is he going to be, like 26 years old? Basically when the guaranteed portion of his new contract is over, he'll be 29 years old. I absolutely think Saquon has 3 excellent years in him. Um, you know, unless he tears his knee again, but that can happen to anybody. That can happen to anybody. Just because he tore it once doesn't mean it's going to happen again. That can happen to anybody. And again, my key thing is he's not a player with those nagging injuries. If he were a nagging injury player, I probably would move on for him, or not offer him more than like $10 million a year. But I think Saquon Barkley is worth $15 million a year because he's a superstar playmaker. This is a guy who can take over the game at any time. He can take the ball from almost, from his 1 yard line and take it to the opponent's end zone for a touchdown. He gives you, obviously, he's not just great in the running game, he's very effective in the receiving game as well. And again, the character thing is important. You can't. There is no higher character than Saquon Barkley. There are people whose character are as high, but there's certainly nobody higher than this dude. And he wants to be a Giant. This is someone you want to retain. And I'm not going to just look at it as like, well, Josh Jacobs is only going to get like $10.5 million a year. Nothing against Josh Jacobs, but I'm taking Saquon Barkley any day, all day. And Saquon Barkley is a giant. Josh Jacobs isn't. That means something to me. This is someone that we drafted, and who became a superstar before our own eyes. That means something to me. This isn't some 32-year-old running back. This is a guy who's what, like 26 years old at the most. So if you can, I absolutely think you can get 3 more years of superstar production out of Saquon Barkley. So listen, with the contract, I really do hope that they come to an agreement before the start of the season that he doesn't play this year on the franchise tag, and then they franchise him again next year, and he deserves a contract. He deserves a contract. And no, I don't want to see him walk next year and go sign with another team. And people say, "Oh, well, you let him walk. No other team's going to sign him for 12 or $13 million a year." Yeah, they will. Yes, they will. Carolina. People might have thought that Carolina was stupid to give McCaffrey that extension a few years ago. Well, guess what? San Francisco 49ers and Kyle Shanahan traded for that contract. I realize it's probably closer to the end of the contract, but that's a lot of money that they're playing for Christian McCaffrey. And Kyle Shanahan's one of the best head coaches and certainly one of the best offensive minds of his generation. And he had no problem with that contract with Christian McCaffrey. And they always do well with running backs. They take running backs off the street, and San Francisco does well. But what do? They go out and they trade. They trade for the highest paid running back in history in Christian McCaffrey. So if they can do that, then I think our New York Giants can and should give Saquon a Christian McCaffrey-like extension. I'm not saying it's got to be $16 million a year. And Saquon himself said he wasn't looking to reset the market, but I'd be willing to go $15 million a year, 4 years, so that's $60 million, and I'd be happy to give him 30 million guaranteed, half of his contract guaranteed, because I think he will be a super weapon for the Giants over the next 3 years. I don't have any doubt in my mind. I don't have any doubt. All right, so let's move on to DeAndre Hopkins. I didn't want to make this a very long episode because there's not all that much to talk about. DeAndre Hopkins. Okay, so I remember Giants fans were clamoring for the Giants to trade for DeAndre Hopkins. Earlier this season, just like, people were clamoring for the Giants to trade for Kenny Galladay a few years ago. Now, I'm definitely higher on DeAndre Hopkins than I ever was in Kenny Galladay. Mea culpa, I did love when they signed Galladay as a free agent. I never would have traded for him. I wasn't going to trade for Hopkins either. Not in the middle of last year, that is. And I wasn't going to trade away any of these draft picks in 2023 for Hopkins either. I didn't feel like we were there yet. We needed to continue to build. However, as a free agent, DeAndre Hopkins, I would definitely kick the tires on that. I'm not saying yes, no matter what, I'm going to rush and give him, the OBJ contract that he just got. That OBJ just got, which I think is $14 million a year. I don't remember if it's 1 or 2 years. I'm not going to rush with that money and give that to Hopkins, but I definitely would speak with him, and I'd want to also give him a physical and have him work out for the team too. Run routes. Catch some passes from Jones. And talk to him quite a bit. Um, but and depending upon the length of the contract, I'd be interested. I would be willing to give him $14 million a year, at least for a year, maybe two, but that 2 years would have to absolutely depend on, obviously, a physical. I'd want him to run for the team. In terms of you know sprinting, running routes. I want to see how he looks. Um, Not too much. I think that's fair, but he is a player. If he's still DeAndre Hopkins, if he's still like 90% of DeAndre Hopkins that we've seen in his prime, he's someone who could substantially help this team. Obviously, I don't even need to say that, but we all know that Hopkins could definitely help this team out a lot if he's still DeAndre Hopkins. Um, but here's the thing too, is I want to make sure that we still have some really good young talented players coming up soon for second contracts. Most obvious is Andrew Thomas, and there is no way I would ever let Andrew Thomas walk. That man's got to be the left tackle for this team for like the next 10 years. You're gonna have Xavier McKinney coming up as well too sometimes. sometime fairly soon for a contract extension. So my point being that I'm very interested in DeAndre Hopkins. If I were the GM, I would want to meet with him. I would be willing to go $14 million a year, just like OBJ got. I wouldn't go more than 2 years, but again, it all depends on a physical. You know, just running some routes for the team, taking some passes from the quarterback from Daniel Jones. And talking to him and picking his brain and see what he thinks, where he's at in his mind at this point in his career. But I don't. Here's the thing with Hopkins, or really any other wide receiver, for the most part, that would be that's available. Even Stephon Diggs too, is that I don't think any of these players put us into the next tier right now. Even with a DeAndre Hopkins, or even say a Stephon Diggs. There have been some rumors out there that you know Diggs is interested in coming to the Giants. He's got that close connection with Dable. Diggs scares me because that's the second team that he's looking to get off of, and I can understand maybe wanting to move on from Minnesota and Kirk Cousins, but when you're looking to move on from Buffalo and Josh Allen, a team that's been like a 12 to 13 to 14 team win, 14 win team over the past like 3 or 4 seasons, that worries me. They do need more talent in Buffalo. Allen and Diggs need another playmaker besides just Diggs. It just can't just be him. They do need another playmaker there. Maybe it'll be Dalton Kincaid, who they just drafted in the first round last month. Maybe it will be, but they do need help. But I'm uncomfortable that Diggs is looking to get out away from a second team, and it's a second good team. Um, he was originally drafted by Minnesota, and they were a pretty good team. Buffalo's been a very good team, and he wants out of there. That scares me. That scares me. But I digress. I digress. DeAndre Hopkins, yes. So I'm interested. I wouldn't go too crazy because even with Hopkins or even a Diggs, I don't think it makes us a tier one team like Philadelphia, Dallas, San Francisco, Kansas City. You know, uh, Bengals, maybe, I still have Buffalo up there too, and a few other teams too. It doesn't make us a tier one team. We still need to see what's going to happen with this offensive line. Um, the defense, and I do think the O line is going to take a big jump this year. Not that it's going to be a top five or top 10 O line, but I think it's gonna make the jump. I think the offensive line this year, I think it's going to make the same jump this year that the Giants offense made last season, and that is from being like ranked 32 to like 16 or 15 or 17, middle of the road. That's where the offense was as a whole in terms of the points that we put up, and that was a huge jump, and that's great. And I think the offensive line is going to make that same type of jump this year too. Maybe not like six. Yeah, I think bold prediction. I think the offensive line for the Giants is going to be middle tier this year. I think Evan Neal is going to have a really nice sophomore year, and I have a feeling John Michael Schmitz is going to slip right in beautifully in at center. And those two guys combined with Andrew Thomas are going to help solidify that line immensely. And I think we'll be a middle tier offensive line, which we haven't been since like the presidency of Calvin Coolidge, it feels like. But my point being that even with Hopkins or some other wide receiver one right now, um, it's not going to take us up to tier one. We still need to see what happens with the offensive line, and the defense still has quite a few holes. We only have one proven linebacker in Okereke. I love that signing, but we have one proven linebacker. That's it. The secondary, I love Deontay Banks. I loved that draft pick, but he's a rookie, and I'm just warning people right now. Rookie cornerbacks tend to struggle. They don't all. They don't all, but most rookie corners taken highly in the first round, they tend to struggle their rookie year. At least for most of the rookie year. Safety outside of Xavier McKinney is unproven. So we've got holes that I don't think that a tier one wide receiver is gonna cover up you know cover up the holes that we have, all the holes that we have. So don't get me wrong. If we had drafted someone who was a potential wide receiver one, I'd be ecstatic. But in terms of bringing on that big contract right now, I'm not sold on it. Again, if we had drafted that wide receiver, say we had drafted like a Jordan Addison, who I think could wind up being a legit wide receiver one, or even a Quentin Johnston. Um, I think, or Jackson Smith and Najigba, if we were able to draft one of those guys, and quickly became a wide receiver one, I'd be ecstatic. But in terms of paying big money right now, especially for Hopkins, who's over the past few years, he had a suspension last year with like, I think he was suspended a few games, 4 or 6 games. I think it was PED suspension. Um, that makes me a little hesitant. So I'd kick the tires on it. I definitely want to see um, what it would take to sign him. How many years we'd have to give him, and if it's nothing too crazy, I'd do $14 million for 1 year. I would do that. I think Hawkins would probably get a little more. I think he could probably get 2 years somewhere, but I would definitely, if he's looking for 14 million like OBJ got for 1 year, I would absolutely move some cap space in order to get him signed, and that is extending Leo Williams and extending Adoree Jackson. I would clear cap space to get DeAndre Hopkins on the Giants roster for 1 year. Okay, we got a comment over here. Chris's videos. What's up, Chris? How's it going, my friend? Thanks for popping in, buddy. I appreciate it. Chris's videos, in case you don't know, is our number one fan of Toys to Titles. And I always appreciate when Chris's videos checks in. And Chris's videos is a huge time Chicago Bears fan. And Chris says, good. All right, man. Glad to see you're doing good. Chris's videos is a huge Chicago Bears fan. And Chris, get ready. I think your Chicago Bears are going to have a nice bounce back year this year. Not that they're going to make the playoffs, but I think you're going to see a lot of progression with that young team. And I'll tell you, I think the NFC North needs to be a little worried about both Detroit, who's further ahead in the rebuild, obviously, and Chicago, who I think is going to be Chicago's going to be a problem fairly soon. They had a really good draft class, and I love Fields as quarterback. But anyway, so that's my take on DeAndre Hopkins. I definitely kick the tires. I'd move some cap space to get him on for 1 year, say $14 million a year. I'm not going to go too crazy because I don't think he again, you know, puts us in the Super Bowl. He doesn't make us a tier one team. I think we still got like 2 years to go. But I'd kick the tire because he would definitely help. He would definitely help. Don't get me wrong. So I would love to see him in Giants blue. All right, guys. So the last thing I wanted to talk about were the OTAs. And you know what? It's light news as it should be because that is light news is good news when it comes to OTAs. Like I said earlier, the key thing is you want to get out of the mandatory rookie camps, mini camps. You want to get out of the rookie mini camps and OTAs without any injuries. That is the key thing. No injuries. But let me just read from John Schmelk over at Giants.com today. John Schmelk, uh, who's a reporter over there at Giants.com. He's like an in-house reporter for the team. Love the guy. He gave a report today. Dated today. I'm just going to read a little bit about it. And most of it is offensive. It's offense centric, as it should be. A lot of these things are really used to really get the offensive players, especially the Giants with all the new offensive players they have, getting them just working together, getting them up to the same speed, learning the routes, learning the plays. That's what the OTAs are really about, especially on the offensive side of the ball. And that's why most of the news is almost always on the offensive side of the ball when it comes to the OTAs. Let me just read a little bit from John Schmelk's report today on Giants.com. Okay, so John says this is what he saw from the sideline. We have seen the continued growth of the Giants' passing game since the arrival of Brian Dable and Mike Kafka. They stretch the defense vertically with deep routes. Ding, 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 ding. That's what I want to read. That's what I want to hear. And that's what I want to see this upcoming season. They stretch the defense vertically with deep routes. Why? Because the Giants invested a lot this offseason in speed. Speed, speed, speed. We don't have a wide receiver one, at least not a proven one. Maybe Jalen Hyatt down the road can turn into that, but I wouldn't expect that this year from him. If he's fully capable of being a wide receiver one anyway. No matter what, I'm glad we got Hyatt because I think he's going to be a very nice weapon in our arsenal. Um, so I'm glad we got him. However, they stretched the defense vertically with deep routes. Thank you. That is music to my ears. And horizontally with crossing routes to get the receivers into open spaces against zone and to create separation against man to man coverage. Yes. And that's what we saw all of last year and to a good degree of success. You saw that in the Minnesota game as well. You also saw that, it blew up in our faces when the Eagles blew it up in our faces all three games we played them, and especially that playoff game where we got demolished. So we needed more players that could add dramatically to our vertical game, and we did that. And Darren Waller, Jalen Hyatt, and Paris Campbell. So you got two guys there who are very speedy, and you got a big man in Darren Waller, big body, great hands, who runs those seam routes really, really well, and can be deployed as a wide receiver as well. Okay, another note from John Schmelk today was slot receiver such as Paris Campbell, who has the speed to separate, can turn a short catch into an explosive play by catching the ball on the move and turning it upfield. I think you're going to see Paris Campbell mostly in the slot this year until Wandale Robinson is fully healthy. And even when Wandale comes back fully healthy, remember he's coming back from a torn ACL. What did they say about Saquon Barkley earlier in this episode? Saquon Barkley came back from his torn ACL, and even though he was on the field for the entire year, it really took until the next year uh, to where he was back to being Saquon Barkley. So don't expect too much. I'm not expecting too much from Wandale Robinson this year. So I think you are going to see Paris Campbell mostly in the slot, and I love it. I think that's where Paris Campbell can play on the outside. He's played on the outside before, but I think he does his best uh, at the slot position. So I'm really looking forward to Paris Campbell. Let's see. Jamison Crowder has also made himself available often using his short area quickness to get open. He made a big play early in practice. Jamison Crowder, I thought that was a cool signing. I've never been a Jamison Crowder fan. I know people would say, in the past, well, Washington, they've got this receiver, that receiver, and Jamison Crowder. And I'd always say, so what? Jamison Crowder, the guy's he's never been a difference maker to any team that he's ever been on. Never been a difference maker. Not that he hasn't had his fair share of success, but I always thought Jamison Crowder was blown out of proportion. To me, he's kind of like slightly above average wide receiver. I mean, on a really good wide receiving core where you have a legit number one and a legit number two. I think on a deep wide receiving core, I think Jamison Crowder would be no better than a number four wide receiver, to be honest with you. Maybe a number three, but that's definitely his ceiling. But I'm glad they signed him because he was cheap. And the Giants have a lot of depth at the wide receiver position right now. Knock on wood, I'm sure injuries will take care of that. There will be attrition through injuries, I'm sure, in preseason. So we'll see. But okay, moving on. Tight end Darren Waller's combination of size and speed makes him a constant target for Daniel Jones. He caught a long pass during 7-on-7s. And one thing that's been consistent so far in these OTAs, which they're halfway done with now, is that Darren Waller has been, he's been playing very, very well. Again, it's OTAs. The defense isn't really putting up too much of a fight. They're not being physical, that is. But Darren Waller has been healthy. He's been out there, connecting with Daniel Jones, which is key. And it's been great. I've been hearing Darren Waller's name a lot in a good way in these OTAs. So that's great. That is something I want to come out of the OTAs with, is hearing Darren Waller's name in a good way consistently. And that's all I've read and seen. Now, here's a name I'm still very intrigued by and who I'd love to see if he is healthy from his own torn ACL. If this man is healthy from his own torn ACL, I'd rather see him make this roster over Jamison Crowder. I think Smith is his last name, the other wide receiver who they got from the Jets as a free agent, and maybe even Sterling Shepard at this point. I love Shep. But Shep has had his too many injuries, and you cannot count on Shepard being on the field. You simply can't at this point in his career. Colin Johnson. Here's what John Schmelk says about Colin Johnson, just for today. Colin Johnson is a big target with good hands and runs good routes. He and Tyrod Taylor connected on a number of short, quick throws to make the ball down the to take the ball to move the ball down the field during 7-on-7s. Johnson and Isaiah Hodgins, another name I've heard consistently in a very good way these OTAs. Johnson and Isaiah Hodgins both offer size and physicality that set them apart from a lot of the other receivers on this roster. Ding, 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 ding. Really, the only big body we have is Isaiah Hodgins. Johnson's another one. And a lot of people were very high on Colin Johnson last year before he went down with a torn ACL, which is unfortunate. Um, now, a player that, Colin Johnson, who's, wasn't drafted high or anything like that, he's been in the practice squad for a year or two. As Giants fans who've been, dying of thirst for when it comes to wide receiver talent for so long. Um, you were always ready to give any new wide receiver, a chance, and almost seems like we have these expectations, at least hopes, but sometimes expectations. It seems like that these wide receivers are, practice squad guys are going to turn into Victor Cruz, the next Victor Cruz, that just seemingly comes out of nowhere. Um, so I normally don't get too high on these types of wide receivers, these practice squad top type guys. I am high on Colin Johnson. He's not just big, he's athletic, and he does have really good hands. To me, he was kind of like Isaiah Hodgins before we got Isaiah Hodgins, like a big, reliable receiver. And like Schmelk says, the only one we have like that right now is Isaiah Hodgins. I'd like to keep Colin Johnson on the roster if he is fully recovered from his torn ACL. I'd like to see Colin Johnson make this. I'd rather have Colin Johnson over Jamison Crowder and the other wide receiver. I think his name is Smith that we got from the Jets. I think we're going to carry 7 wide receivers, just like we did last year, except the talent is going to be much deeper this year than it was last year. We don't have a wide receiver 1, but we're going to have a whole bunch of wide receiver 3s. Um, and I'm okay with that because we've had too many seasons in a row of a wide receiver 3 as our number 1 wide receiver and then guys off the street. So we will have depth. We will have depth. But I'd love to see Colin Johnson make this roster over some of these other guys. He talks about Khalil Pimpton and Jeff Smith. Jeff Smith was that other wide receiver from the Jets that I was thinking of. He talks about David Sills. I'm not interested in any of these wide receivers. Um, the defense also made some plays throughout practice. So Dory Jackson had a pair of pass breakups, one of which was nearly intercepted. And this is kind of the story of Dory Jackson's career. Dory Jackson is a really good coverage corner. I love him. A great free agency signing 2 years ago. He's been wonderful for the Giants. He stayed healthy as well. Um, and again, he's excellent in coverage. However, we don't have any proven ball hawks on this team. Even Deontay Banks isn't known for his ball skills, in terms of getting interceptions. We are lacking in that. He also says Zion Gilbert came up with an interception over the middle. Okay, there was one interception. I don't know if Zion Gilbert's actually going to make the roster, but he got an interception. Rookie Deontay Banks knocked away a pass on or near the sideline. The practice ended with a move the ball 7-on-7, with the offense walking away with touchdowns for the ones and twos. Daniel Jones hit Paris Campbell, who might have been able to turn up the field for a touchdown. On the very next play, Isaiah Hodgins tiptoed on the back line for what looked like a touchdown. On the next play, Jones threw another touchdown pass, this one to Darius Slayton on the sideline. And then last but not least, Tyrod Taylor methodically navigated the twos down the field with multiple completions to Colin Johnson. Ding, ding, ding. I want Colin Johnson to make this roster. He sealed the drive with a touchdown pass to Khalil Pimpleton. And again, Colin Johnson, I'd rather have him over Crowder and Smith. Let's see. And that's it from John Schmelk's OTA report for today. I thought it was worth reading out because there's really not anything that tends to come out of these OTAs. But I thought there was some of the cooler notes, the cooler points there, and I just wanted to hit on those. One other thing that I will talk about from the defensive side of the ball is Xavier McKinney and Bobby Okereke. Now, Xavier McKinney played last year. He had the green dot on defense, and that is the player with the green dot is the one on defense is the one who's usually helping to direct the defense when it's on the field. To position players, direct players to where they're supposed to be on a given defensive play. That's what the player with the green dot does. And Xavier McKinney, safety, had that last year. So far, it's my understanding that so far in the OTAs, in these OTAs, Bobby Okereke, the free agent linebacker, has had the green dot, and I assume he had that in Indianapolis. But he's been the green dot guy on the defense so far in the OTAs. Uh, we'll see, what's going to happen with that. I mean, it's not a big deal really to me. I just find it interesting because Xavier McKinney had it last year, and Wink Martindale, the defensive coordinator for the Giants, when he was in Baltimore, he was known to his track record was to have his safeties have the green dot. And the line of thinking is that the safety didn't totally make sense. The guys, the safeties, like the cornerbacks, but the safeties have everything in front of them. The linebackers, you've got the linemen in front of you, and you have the secondary behind you. It's confusing. It's confusing when you're looking around all over the place to make sure everyone is where they're supposed to be. The safety has it's got the whole field in front of him, so he's got a better view of everything. So it totally makes sense. But I know Bobby Okereke comes with the reputation of having a very high football IQ. So, and I believe back in the day, I think Giants linebacker Antonio Pierce, I believe, had the green dot in the mid 2000s when he was on our team, and he was a phenomenal leader, phenomenal linebacker for this team, and incredibly high football IQ. So it's going to be cool to see what happens with that. I mean, doesn't matter to me. Whoever just hey, it could be an edge rusher with a green dot as long as as long as they're helping out the defense, it doesn't matter to me. I just thought I'd bring that up because I thought it was interesting. So, um, three comments. Chris's videos. Chris says, "Would you rather want the Giants to draft corner or wide receiver in the last draft?" Chris, we had so many. This team, the Giants, had so many holes still to fill. It really didn't matter to me. You know what, Chris, I did want cornerback. I did. I would have taken Deontay Banks probably over any of those wide receivers that went ahead of him. I did want cornerback. I do get nervous by cornerbacks taken in the first round unless they are Sauce Gardner, because a lot of times they do struggle in the first year. Um, I do like the idea of getting veteran cornerbacks, veteran CBs on the defense, the guys who have proven themselves. But this was a really good, deep cornerback class, and I did want to swing for that. I did want to swing for that in the first round. And when Deontay Banks was there, I was very happy with him. So yeah, I would have went Deontay Banks probably over any of those four wide receivers. I have to admit. Yep, if I had the option, yep. Yep, that's what I would have done. I would have went Banks. So don't get me wrong. If Banks was gone and the Giants wanted to go Jackson Smith and Najigba, uh, Zay Flowers, Jordan Addison, Quentin Johnston, no complaints from me. No complaints from me because I think all four of those guys have a chance to be a legit wide receiver one, and the Giants need that too. The Giants need that too. The thing is that I'm not convinced that those four guys that any of them would have been a true wide receiver one. I'm not convinced about that, but I think all four of them will be really good wide receivers. Don't get me wrong, but I like Deontay Banks. I was very happy that he fell to us, and that is who I would have taken. I have to admit that is. So I was very very happy with that. But anyway, guys, that's it. I am out of here, and man, it's almost 50 minutes. I told my wife I was going to keep this to 30 minutes, so I lied. I lied. Anyway, before I go, guys, Twitter handles for me and all my compadres here at Toilets to Titles. If you could please give us all a follow, I'd really appreciate it. And that might not even be every single Twitter handle. We're always adding new people here to our team. So there might be one or two names that are not on there yet. I will get them on there though. But Twitter handles for me and my compadres, if you could please follow us all, greatly appreciate it. And if you can, please hit that like button, subscribe, hit that bell, give us that 5-star Apple review because we deserve it. Yes, we do. And guys, I'm pretty much out of here. Chris's videos. Take care, my friend. Hey, Chris's videos. Maybe we will do the Frankenstein League together. Maybe we can work that out, buddy. Where you and I do the Frankenstein League together. Maybe I put up the $25 for the league, and then maybe I kind of let you work it. So we'll see. Well, I'll be in touch with you via email. Let me try. I got to think about that because it could be a little complicated. I don't know if that's something we could. I don't know if that's something that's even workable or doable. Let me think about it. Let me think about the logistics in that. But Chris's videos, if you're interested, the Frankenstein League, maybe I'll just put up the $25 for it, and then maybe I'll let you, make the moves. But I gotta see. I have to look into it to see if that's even possible, for the two of us to do it. So, but anyway, guys, I'm out of here. This is Joe. I'll catch you next Wednesday with another beautiful episode of New York Giants Corner. Have a great week, everyone. I'll talk to you soon. And happy June. Tomorrow's June 1st. Unbelievable. I'm out of here. Take care.